everyone, Novels Wonderland here. Thank you all for the love and support you've shown me and the channel.
Welcome to Novels Wonderland, Junji Ito. I shall smash Hellstar Remina, hunting target. Chapter 70-79, Unknown Mental Pollution. 1,416 words. Dragging his exhausted and heavy body out of the gym, the sky outside had already darkened. The street lights were just beginning to flicker on, casting a pale reflection upon his face. A sensation as if a lifetime had passed welled up in his heart. Amamiya Rin turned his head to glance at the gym behind him, and an inexplicable, intense sense of attachment arose within him. Something is wrong. I am not a masochist. Amamiya Rin shook his head vigorously, silently reciting the Diamond Sutra in his heart to stabilize his mind. If nothing unexpected had happened, this gym likely possessed some form of mental pollution. It could influence the fitness enthusiast's state of mind without them even noticing. Incorrect, incorrect, incorrect. My condition is incorrect. Amamiya Rin leaned against the wall, supporting his forehead with his hand, a look of uncertainty flashing through his eyes. Maintaining absolute sobriety during the workout, increasing enthusiasm for fitness, and losing fear of anomalies, were these the only three types of mental pollution? It seems there is more. What else is there? What else? Amamiya Rin's palm gradually tightened its grip. More than that, a distinct intuition told him that his mental state had been subjected to even more influences without his awareness. After racking his brains for a long time, Amamiya Rin still didn't realize exactly how many problems he had developed. He only had a vague feeling that something was wrong with him. However, whatever the issue was, the harm shouldn't be too significant. After all, even the author avatar, Junji Ito, had experienced this pressure training. He wouldn't go so far as to pit himself against a lethal trap, would he? Moreover, he was currently using Kawakami Tomi's body. Even if there was harm, it wouldn't affect his true self. Gently patting his chest to soothe his unsettled mind, Amamiya Rin headed to a nearby Yoshinoya, and ordered 2 supersized beef bowl sets. However, just as he was preparing to eat, back at Todo General Hospital, the door to his hospital ward was knocked upon. The nurse pushed a food cart over and peered into the ward through the glass on the door. Amamiya Rin's body lay flat on the hospital bed, eyes closed, showing no reaction. Is he asleep? The nurse muttered to herself, pushing the door open directly. Amamiya, Mr. Amamiya, it's time to eat. It's not good to skip meals, you know. Pushing the cart to the side, the nurse raised her voice and called out to Amamiya Rin. Hearing the nurse's call, Amamiya Rin gradually exited the state of contemplation. His consciousness floated up from the Hitomi network, and returned to his own body. I apologize. My spirit hasn't been very good these past few days, so I went to sleep rather early. Amamiya Rin opened his eyes and sat up straight. At the same time, a shrill torrent of abuse transmitted from the Hitomi network. You bastard. You actually used my body to go to that kind of hellhole. That was basically torture. Do you know how much pain I'm in all over? Kawakami Tomi's piercing voice nearly punctured Amamiya Rin's eardrums. More importantly, fitness training like some stinking man. Is your brain broken? My body is perfect. How could you paint legs on a snake, ruining perfection with unnecessary additions? Making me become a muscle woman. Most importantly, what time is it now? It's 6 p.m. We agreed to switch at 3 p.m. every day. You don't keep your word. You controlled me for 3 extra hours. For Kawakami Tomi, pain was secondary. Her body was primary, but freedom was the most important thing of all. She was supposed to gain her freedom at 3 in the afternoon, yet she had been dragged along for a full 3 hours. How could she not be furious? Sorry. I was in the middle of fitness training, after all. I couldn't exactly give up halfway, right? Besides, don't look down on muscle women. Muscle women were actually one of my fetishes in the past, although, because of the white skeleton visualization, it's hard to arouse that interest anymore. However, by exercising the body and gaining a strong physique, you all will have the power to resist perpetrators. You won't need to worry about being tortured, massacred, or dismembered, creating a bunch of unauthorized knockoffs. Isn't that a good thing? Amamiya Rin responded leisurely. Compared to when he was utilizing Kawakami Tomi's body, his attitude now appeared much more composed. Your spirit isn't very good. No wonder. I noticed it as soon as I came in. You're. The nurse set up the overbed table, her gaze sweeping across Amamiya Rin's face. She spoke with sudden realization, your complexion isn't very good. That must be the reason. Remember to sleep early and wake up early, and don't let your imagination run wild. A patient like you should focus on normal recuperation, it's not good to prescribe sleep aids. My complexion isn't very good. Amamiya Rin froze for a moment and rubbed his brow. Although he had said his spirit wasn't good, that was just a casual excuse. He had just slept yesterday. In order to extend his lifespan, and not waste time in the dream world, he intended not to sleep today or tomorrow. He planned to wait 2 days to learn more knowledge and skills before entering the dream again. This couldn't be helped. The time span of the dream was getting larger and larger. The last time was 10 years, this time it had become 15 years. Next time, he feared it would become 20 or even 30 years. What do you mean by that? Ha! You want to make us do fitness training too? Thoughts full of resistance transmitted from the Tomi network. Amamiya Rin's expression remained unchanged. I have already explained the stakes. We finally have a way to increase strength, do you really not accept it? You must realize, this suggestion benefits you, not me. Stupid idea. Why do you think we need strength to fight? Such crude matters are not what a Kawakami Tomi should be doing. The thoughts of the Tomis were arrogant in exactly the same way. Can't you change a little bit? Don't cling so stubbornly to your character settings. Amamiya Rin retorted internally, but he didn't force the issue. His current essential need for Kawakami Tomi was not the enhancement of strength, but the absorption of knowledge. The person who needed strength was himself. However, if we can enhance our own strength, maybe we can suppress Amamiya Rin. Yet, just as Amamiya Rin's thought of not forcing them passed, a thought from a Kawakami Tomi also flashed rapidly through the Tomi network. But it was only a flash. The Tomi network became quiet in an extremely short time, like a calm stream where fish occasionally leap and splash ripples, but mostly characterized by deliberate restraint. Amamiya Rin lowered his eyebrows slightly, his heart as still as water. The corners of his mouth hooked up in a minuscule arc, revealing a hint of helplessness. Ignore those small matters. What about me? At this moment, the thoughts of Tomi number 25 surged over. She questioned him aggressively. 3 hours. How are you going to compensate me? Compensation. That is truly a strange question. I didn't ask you to pay me back for the sleeping time, so why should I compensate you? Amamiya Rin asked Kawakami Tomi in return, adopting an attitude that took this for granted. You guy. However, if you can help me bring some sandpaper and cotton cloth, and a few more cans of black coffee, the next time it's your turn, your control time will be a whole afternoon and an evening. Not waiting for Kawakami Tomi to finish cursing, Amamiya Rin's will intercepted her voice. Wait for it. Leaving a rough voice behind in the Tomi network, inside the Yoshinoya, Kawakami Tomi revealed a ferocious expression. She shoveled the beef bowl into her mouth in great mouthfuls, as if she were eating Amamiya Rin's flesh and blood. _______. Read more, Walnut-chan. New history, group chat of the dead. White heavy checkmark access up to 40 advanced chapters of all stories. White heavy checkmark receive exclusive content and updates. Help us hit our community goals. 100 Power Stones equals +1 bonus chapter for everyone. 140 members equals plus 5 extra chapters of all stories. P. Walnut-chan. Chapter 71, Hunting Target. 1,392 words. Take this. At Todo General Hospital, Kawakami Tomi walked into the ward and forcefully threw 2 large bags onto the hospital bed, smashing them right onto Amamiya Rin's body. Could you be a little more polite? Amamiya Rin sat up straight. While roasting Kawakami Tomi, he took the items out of the bags. Sandpaper and cotton cloth for sharpening the wooden sword, and black coffee to refresh the mind. The necessary items were, for the time being, complete. Wearing a sour face, Kawakami Tomi rolled her eyes at Amamiya Rin, and extended her right hand toward him. Amamiya Rin revealed a confused expression. Don't play dumb. You fake nice guy. Since you aren't willing to let us fish money out of men's pockets, at least reimburse me for the money spent on fitness and shopping, as well as my daily expenses. Kawakami Tomi crossed her arms over her chest, sneering as she looked down at him from a haughty angle. Amamiya Rin gave a sheepish smile, took his wallet out of the bedside table, extracted a few bills, and handed them to Kawakami Tomi. The fitness expenses are used on your own body. Is this money really necessary? You really are stingy. I advise you not to stick to that little bottom line of yours. If you want to implement your plan, let alone 1 billion, even 10 billion US dollars wouldn't be enough. Kawakami Tomi unceremoniously took the bills and put them into her own wallet. Well, as for things like a bottom line, it's best not to break through them casually. Amamiya Rin shrugged. Worldly affairs are unpredictable. He might one day break through his bottom line, but he was far from reaching that stage right now. Boring fellow. Kawakami Tomi clicked her tongue. Her eyes rotated, and a wicked smile curled up on her lips. If you're short on money, I have a method. Want to hear it? Before Kawakami Tomi's voice had even faded, Amamiya Rin revealed a thoughtful expression. That could count as executing justice, right? Kawakami Tomi's thoughts had already informed Amamiya Rin of everything. A certain Kawakami Tomi could practically be called number 0, right? Why call her that? Because she was the Kawakami Tomi who grew from the internal organ transplanted into Mitsuo Yukiko, and also the Kawakami Tomi that Amamiya Rin had once killed. Although he hadn't seen her again since leaving Morita Hospital, the number 0 Kawakami Tomi had been active all along. Teacher Takagi, you should know him, right? From our memories. Amamiya Rin nodded. The teacher Takagi in Kawakami Tomi's mouth was likely the man who had dismembered Kawakami Tomi 2 years ago. The reason was that Kawakami Tomi claimed to be pregnant with teacher Takagi's child, and demanded that teacher Takagi divorce his wife. Teacher Takagi seems to have always wanted to research where my charm comes from, you know. The kidney transplanted into Mitsuo Yukiko back then was donated to Mitsuo Yukiko by teacher Takagi using my father's name. He used the hands of the doctors at Morita Hospital to study my body, but the result was only the discovery that gamma rays could enhance my regeneration ability. Kawakami Tomi's eyes narrowed into a bewitching and slender shape. Her fingertips curled around a lock of black hair hanging from the side of her face, revealing a slightly mocking smile. After leaving Morita Hospital, teacher Takagi didn't stop his plan either. That guy, taking the imposters with him, seized a family's luxury mansion and even turned the women inside into monsters. That was a hideous monster made of a pile of imposters' heads. Burning that monster to ashes and rescuing the imprisoned owner of the mansion should earn quite a bit of reward, right? Deal. Amamiya Rin agreed without a second thought. Whether he could get a reward or not didn't matter. He could plunder spoils of war from the culprit, and furthermore, he could remove a harm for the people. After telling the news to Amamiya Rin, Kawakami Tomi walked out of the ward. Crossing the hospital corridor, just as she was about to turn toward the elevator hall, Kawakami Tomi's brow furrowed. She smelled a strange odor. At the same time, accompanied by the rapid sound of rolling wheels, two nursing assistants pushed a stretcher bed toward her from the direction of the elevator hall. Their pace was hurried, and they looked very anxious. Kawakami Tomi stepped out of the way and subconsciously glanced over. Lying on the stretcher was a man, a very disgusting man. His eyes were wide open, and a white, viscous substance resembling tofu dregs was constantly oozing from his eye sockets, nostrils, corners of his mouth, and ear canals, emitting an indescribably fishy stench. Tisk! Tomi revealed a look of disgust without concealment. She immediately quickened her pace, fleeing far away from that patient as if escaping. Inside the ward, Amamiya Rin was doing preparation work. He took out the sandpaper and cotton cloth Tomi had brought. Using different grades of sandpaper, he gradually polished the edge of the wooden sword. Wood shavings fell with a rustle, and the originally rounded edge gradually revealed sharp lines. This task took up the better part of Amamiya Rin's night. By the time he used the cotton cloth to wipe the blade body and remove all the wooden splinters, the first rays of morning sunlight had already penetrated the window and landed on Amamiya Rin's face. At this moment, the curve of the wooden sword had already become sharp. When Amamiya Rin's finger brushed past the newly polished edge, he could feel a subtle cutting sensation. Although it was far inferior to a real sword, he currently had no way to obtain a real sword. While a sharpened wooden sword was also prohibited, it wasn't as sensitive as a real sword. No one would ask him to draw the wooden sword from its sheath to check. Putting the wooden sword into its sheath, and placing it in the sword bag, Amamiya Rin moved his somewhat stiff shoulders, then picked up the black coffee on the bedside table and took a large gulp. The bitter taste refreshed his spirit, and the fatigue of a busy night seemed to recede a bit. After the routine rounds and breakfast ended, Amamiya Rin leaned on his cane, carried the wooden sword on his back, took the elevator to the top floor, and then walked up the stairs to the open rooftop. Gazing at the clouds on the horizon and the morning sun, Amamiya Rin took a deep breath of the cool air. He leaned his cane against the water tower, took out the wooden sword, held it with both hands, closed his eyes, and gradually entered the realm of the gate of contemplation, meticulously sensing every condition of his own body. Then he moved. At first, it was just the most basic saburi. The movements were slow and stable. Every swing sought precision. The wooden sword cut through the air, emitting a dull whistle. Soon, sweat soaked his back, and his muscles began to issue protests of soreness. However, Amamiya Rin did not stop. The breathing technique operated naturally. The foundational mode of the Crimson Lotus breathing supported his physical stamina, improving the efficiency of oxygen utilization, allowing his movements to remain stable amidst exhaustion. Next, footwork practice was also added. Amamiya Rin dragged his legs, moving across the rooftop with short and rapid steps. Without the cane in hand, balancing his body became difficult. Several times, he nearly stumbled and fell, only steadying his form by tapping the ground with the wooden sword. Afterwards came the Iaido drawing technique named Suigetsu, the miraculous sword of empty and real variations, the fast, accurate, and ruthless Katatsu. Amamiya Rin squeezed the stamina out of his body, forcing himself to adapt to the high-intensity rhythm, and letting his body familiarize itself with the Shinkajiryu that he had only practiced in his dreams. _______. Here, Walnut-chan. New history, group chat of the dead. White heavy checkmark gain early access to 40 chapters for all stories. White heavy checkmark enjoy exclusive content and special announcements. We have set new community milestones. 100 Power Stones equals +1 bonus chapter for all readers. 140 members equals +5 additional chapters for all series. P. Walnut-chan. Chapter 72, World. 1,325 words. Kendo training lasted from 7:30 to 11:30. 4 hours of rehabilitation exercise pushed Amamiya Rin's body to its limit. He sat on the ground to rest for a moment, placed the wooden sword back into the sword bag, and returned to his hospital ward leaning on his cane. That patient. So scary. Increased again. Heard there are some in other cities too. Is it an infectious disease? Passing through the corridor, Amamiya Rin's sharp ears caught the whispering of passing patients and nurses discussing some incident. No way. Amamiya Rin's expression changed slightly. His gaze swept over the nurses' faces. They looked uneasy and agitated, seemingly discussing some grotesque topic. He had seen this situation before. It was at Morita Hospital. On the day he just woke up, returning to his ward after his first examination, he noticed the nurses whispering to each other. Then, about 10 days later, Morita Hospital was completely wiped out. Don't tell me a supernatural event has occurred at this hospital too. I should probably be a bit more confident. Haray's Kyoko has been to this hospital, and Kayako and Siki Toshio have also visited. Supernatural events have already occurred. Amamiya Rin suddenly realized that if he hadn't sacrificed Kawakami Tomi to stall Kayako, this hospital would likely have met the same wiped-out ending as Morita Hospital before long. Nurse, has something strange happened in the hospital? Amamiya Rin rubbed his face and walked over to the chatting nurses to strike up a conversation. Amamiya Rin asked very directly. He wasn't good at beating around the bush. The nurses looked at each other, seemingly communicating with their eyes about whether they could speak. It's not really a secret. Many people have seen it. Yesterday and this morning, many strange patients were brought in. The symptoms of those patients are extremely terrifying. Their brains, for some unknown reason, actually melted away. After a moment, one nurse finally spoke in a mysterious tone. Yes, it's too terrifying. When I saw it earlier, I almost threw up. I've never heard of any disease or virus that can cause that kind of harm. I heard similar patients appeared in the neighboring city before. Supposedly, there was an entire school where everyone died because their brains melted. Truly dreadful. How could such a thing happen? Once one person spoke up and broke the ice, the other nurses also began to speak all at once. Has it not been confirmed what caused it yet? A young boy leaned in and asked with some concern. Not for the time being. Because it's too bizarre, they can't determine the underlying principle. A nurse replied. Dissolving. Amamiya Rin's expression became grave as he spat out a word. Although he had forgotten the specific content, just the single element of brains melting was enough to determine the situation. Dissolving. Junji Ito's Dissolving series. The man who signed a contract with a demon goes around apologizing. People who hear the apology will have their brains dissolve. In the final chapter of the series, that man apologizes to everyone in Japan through a press conference, wiping out the country in one breath. One can only say that the manga artists of this country really dare to draw anything. In manga, Japan is always on the verge of destruction. Sometimes it can be saved, sometimes it's thoroughly dead. And this is Junji Ito's worldview. The ending is naturally thoroughly dead. Big brother, do you know the inside story? The boy wearing a black school uniform noticed Amamiya Rin's expression and hurriedly asked him. What inside story? I've just heard of similar things. It belongs to a type of urban legend. Amamiya Rin shook his head slightly and organized his thoughts. Urban legend. The surrounding people cast curious gazes over, urging Amamiya Rin with their eyes to continue. They also believed that a symptom like brain dissolution was more likely a supernatural phenomenon like a curse than a disease. Yes, a legend about an apologizing maniac. I heard there was a young man who apologized to people nearby wherever he went. The people he apologized to would eventually die from their brains dissolving. Only by immediately covering your ears when seeing him about to apologize could one escape the calamity. That school you guys mentioned just now, there was one person inside who was scared into fainting and didn't finish listening to the apology, so they were lucky enough to survive. Amamiya Rin spoke while thinking. The protagonist of the Dissolving series appearing in this city was truly too terrible. However, that person seemed to be just an ordinary human in himself. Although he could cause other people's brains to dissolve by apologizing, his body was still that of a normal person, without superhuman strength. The only thing that needed to be feared was the demon behind the protagonist. That demon capable of killing 120 million people at once. Otherwise, I should just run away, flee this country. The problem is, I don't have a passport. I don't have the predecessor's memories either. Going abroad isn't something that can be done in a short time. Amamiya Rin felt a severe headache. He knew this world was terrible, but he had only transmigrated half a month ago, and now another world-ending existence had appeared in his vicinity. How was he supposed to withstand this? Amamiya Rin, whose pressure had doubled, could only return to his own hospital ward first in the end, because it was lunchtime. Iron is necessary, food is steel, miss a meal and you'll feel hunger's squeal. What he needed most right now was to replenish the physical strength consumed by his rehabilitation. After finishing lunch, just as he put down his chopsticks, his mobile phone suddenly started vibrating. Who sent a text message? Amamiya Rin picked up the mobile phone placed on the bedside table, flipped it open, and saw a text message from an unfamiliar number light up the screen. I have witnessed the true face of the serial killer in this city, but I cannot explain the complete process in a text message. However, I very much want to stop the killer's atrocities. If you are willing to assist me, please send me your phone number. If you are not willing to assist me, please also forward this text message to 10 of your friends within 3 days, otherwise, the next victim might be you. If you don't forward this, are you not a XX person? The format of the text message gave Amamiya Rin a strong sense of déjà vu. He had encountered similar things in his past life. Moments, text messages, and the like, they were basically scams or pranks. However, he knew very clearly that this time seemed to be different. Serial murder case, he had heard of it before. Professor Matsuura. When he experimented with hypnosis on Professor Matsuura last time, he heard him mention it. Recently, a serial murder case had appeared in this city. 4 young women had already been victimized. Currently, it was only known that the cause of death was excessive blood loss, and the killer had not been found to this day. Excessive blood loss. Vampire. Amamiya Rin immediately thought of Fujino Terumi's encounter a few days ago. The victims were young women, the cause of death was excessive blood loss. If the killer wasn't a vampire, what was it? Tomi modified monsters, dissolving demon, vampire, how come so many anomalies popped up all at once? Amamiya Rin realized that his shallow Diana could no longer maintain his calm. ______. He. Walnut-chan for more chapters. New history, group chat of the dead. White heavy checkmark, unlock a 40-chapter backlog for all my series. White heavy checkmark, receive exclusive content and regular updates. Help us reach these goals. 100 Power Stones equals +1 universal bonus chapter. 140 members equals +5 extra chapters for all stories. P. Walnut-chan. Chapter 73, Cognitive Interference. 1,327 words. Curses attract one another, could that be the only explanation? Amamiya Rin closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and steadied his mind. What should he do next? That shouldn't be necessary, right? Although there are many victims here, the protagonist of the dissolving series wouldn't necessarily run to this spot. Perhaps he should contact Kazumi Junya. It felt somewhat useless. A demon capable of instantly dissolving over 100 million people was already beyond the scope of what humanity could handle. As for the vampire, 3 days ago he could take one down with just a cane, let alone now, there was no need for Induranko to step in. Despite thinking this, Amamiya Rin still dialed Kazumi Junya's phone number. At least he could reduce the number of some victims. Officer Kazumi, I apologize for bothering you again. Using rumors as a pretext, Amamiya Rin informed Kazumi Junya of everything he could say regarding the dissolving. This was all he could do. As for how to let the public deal with the dissolving demon, that was no longer Amamiya Rin's task. Wait a moment. Dissolving. Found it. After receiving Amamiya Rin's notification, Kazumi Junya spent half an hour finding the file regarding the dissolving. According to the file records, the person related to the dissolving phenomenon is an 18-year-old male named Aizawa Yuma. The earliest clear record was 6 years ago in Saitama Prefecture. After a neighborhood association event, over 30 participants died from their brains dissolving. He was the only survivor. In every subsequent dissolving incident, his tracks could be found near the crime scene. Not only that, but 4 years ago, a police station in Nagano Prefecture once arrested Aizawa Yuma. However, the entire station, including citizens handling business inside at the time, totaling 47 people, all perished. Colleagues who subsequently investigated via surveillance equipment and recording devices also had their brains dissolve after listening to the recordings. The police attempted long-range sniping, but the day after confirming Aizawa Yuma's death, he appeared completely unharmed in another location. He found the sniper who fired the shot and the official who issued the order, obliterating them all. The conclusion in the file is that Aizawa Yuma possesses at least the following abilities: cognitive interference that blocks information dissemination, a brain-dissolving ability that ignores the target's strength, an undying body capable of multiple resurrections, and a causality-level ability to precisely locate targets. The countermeasure in the file is, just like with Kawakami Tomi, it is best to do nothing. Kazumi Junya detailed the file regarding the dissolving incidents. When he spoke of that countermeasure, his voice revealed a bitter sense of powerlessness. He could do nothing. He couldn't deal with Kawakami Tomi, and he couldn't deal with Aizawa Yuma either. The 2 cases he handled previously were also resolved inexplicably. He somewhat didn't understand what he could do in the police history compilation room. Resurrection abilities, causality level tracking, information dissemination blocking, being powerless is normal, Amamiya Rin said calmly. He didn't recall Aizawa Yuma having abilities outside of dissolving. The abilities Kazumi Junya mentioned likely all came from the demon behind Aizawa Yuma. Even the dissolving was the demon's power. If the dissolving demon didn't allow Aizawa Yuma to die, then no one could thoroughly kill Aizawa Yuma. There is no solution. Amamiya Rin sighed inwardly, yet he didn't hold too heavy a sense of attachment to it. After all, there were truly too many insoluble, world-ending curses, so many that he was already accustomed to them. Amamiya-kun, how did you know that Aizawa Yuma's curse method is through apologizing? Because of the blockage of information dissemination, not a single deceased person has been able to leave behind a clue while alive to this day. Kazumi Junya's question came through the mobile phone. Coincidence? Amamiya Rin's answer was extremely concise, letting one know upon hearing it that many details had been omitted. Alright, if you don't want to say, I won't force you. In any case, thank you very much for the information you provided, Amamiya-kun. We will immediately proceed to verify it. If confirmed to be correct, this might save many innocent lives. Kazumi Junya didn't dig for the root of the matter. He solemnly expressed his gratitude to Amamiya Rin. I've received your gratitude, but if this news is ultimately proven true, and is indeed helpful to you, is there any possibility of applying for some bonus money for me? Amamiya Rin nodded slightly. Before hanging up the phone, he proposed a legitimate yet not quite appropriate suggestion. Although, generally speaking, being a good person meant one shouldn't actively seek a reward. However, Amamiya Rin's condition did not permit him to refuse the return he deserved. Bonus? There was a moment of silence on the other end of the phone, followed immediately by a voice that was somewhat stunned and carried a hint of not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Look, you guys should know a bit about my situation. The person who hit me has mysteriously disappeared, so I can't get follow-up compensation. The compensation already paid is still in a trust account, requiring lengthy procedures to access. Because of physical reasons, I couldn't attend university on time, and my memory was damaged during my life as a vegetable. Now is exactly when I need money. Amamiya Rin's tone was very natural and very realistic, making Kazumi Junya on the other end of the line unable to smile. He had only just realized that Amamiya Rin's predicament was this terrible. How about this? I will ask department head Indu and strive to apply for a bonus for you. Kazumi Junior's attitude became serious. Then I'll thank you in advance, Officer Kazumi. We are the ones who should say thank you. You take care of yourself as well. Although you said you learned it by coincidence, getting involved in this kind of thing still carries considerable risk. Rest assured, I am someone who cherishes my life very much. Good, then let's keep in touch. The call ended. After hanging up the phone, Amamiya Rin suddenly noticed another matter. That text message about, if you don't forward this, you aren't a XX person. He had been so focused on chatting about the dissolving matter just now that he had completely thrown this text message to the back of his mind. It couldn't be helped, compared to a demon of world-ending specifications, this serial murder case and vampire were truly events so small they couldn't be smaller. It's really something that outside of encountering various world-ending specification events, I can still run into a small fry like a vampire. Amamiya Rin couldn't help but chuckle. There was really no need to make another call to Kazumi Jr. for such a trivial matter. I'll handle it myself. I'll take this small fry to relax and relieve my stress. Amamiya Rin rubbed his face, which hadn't been able to hold back a smile, and sent his own phone number to that number. However, although the number was sent, a call from that side was slow to come. Amamiya Rin was not impatient either. He took out his wooden sword and performed saburi right there in the hospital ward, engaging in exercise to aid digestion. About half an hour later, Amamiya Rin's mobile phone suddenly rang. He put down the wooden sword, picked up the mobile phone, flipped the lid open to look, and saw caller unknown, as the other party had set their caller ID to hidden. Amamiya Rin answered the phone without a care in the world. _______. Walnut-chan, winky face. New history, reincarnated as Mojito, watch me manipulate everyone. White heavy checkmark, jump 40 chapters ahead of the public release. White heavy checkmark, get access to special perks and news. Help smash these goals. 100 power stones equals +1 bonus chapter for everyone. 140 members equals +5 extra chapters for all stories. P. Walnut-chan. Chapter 74, First Capture Operation. 1266 words. Hello. Excuse me, are you the person who sent the text message just now? Amamiya Rin got straight to the point. Yes, that's right, it's me. The answering voice belonged to a young woman. She sounded somewhat agitated. Thank you. Most people simply ignore me, and even if someone does send me their number, they usually just mock and verbally abuse me. That was only natural. Under normal circumstances, if one witnessed a criminal's face, they should call the police directly. This woman hadn't done so, which made her credibility too low. If Amamiya Rin didn't know that anything could happen in this worldview, he wouldn't have sent his phone number to her either. Did you really witness the serial killer? Who is it? Amamiya Rin asked bluntly. The killer is Hattori Arisa. The other party spoke a name directly, using a matter-of-fact tone, as if Amamiya Rin would know who that was just by hearing the name. Who? Amamiya Rin was completely bewildered. She has another name, Kawahara Miyuki. The other party spoke again. It was still a name Amamiya Rin hadn't heard of. He seemed to have heard this name somewhere. And who is Kawahara Miyuki? However, Amamiya Rin didn't keep his head down thinking. He pressed the other party for answers directly. The other party fell silent for a moment, seemingly speechless at Amamiya Rin's reaction. The national-level popular singer, Kawahara Miyuki. The prodigy seen only once in a decade. If 1999 really is the end of the world, she would be the one to draw a perfect period on our country's music scene. The praise for her on the internet is countless. She is more famous than that Fujino Terumi, and she debuted earlier than her too. Even country bumpkins outside of Tokyo should know her, unless they don't have internet. The other party sighed and gave Kawahara Miyuki a grand introduction. What the hell is country bumpkins outside of Tokyo? Do Tokyo snobs have to diss outsiders even at a time like this? Amamiya Rin really wanted to retort. Although he had heard the saying in his past life that everywhere outside Tokyo is the countryside, this was the first time in this life he had felt this kind of attitude from a Tokyoite. However, rather than roasting her over such trivial matters, Amamiya Rin noticed something else. Fujino Terumi. Why mention her at a time like this? Amamiya Rin's brow furrowed. The other party's phrasing made it sound as if, even if he didn't know Kawahara Miyuki, he would know Fujino Terumi. But if he didn't even know the more famous Kawahara Miyuki, how would he know Fujino Terumi? Because Fujino Terumi and Kawahara Miyuki are the most dazzling idols of recent years. Their circles are different, but I figured that if you don't like listening to songs, you should at least watch TV dramas or movies, right? The other party's reason couldn't convince Amamiya Rin, but he didn't pursue it to the end. Right now, Kawahara Miyuki was more important. A national-level popular female singer is the serial killer. And a suspected vampire at that. Although it was a bit nonsensical, as he said before, in this world, nothing is surprising. I want to know more specific information. For example, what did the Kawahara Miyuki you saw look like? How did she kill people? Crap. Before Amamiya Rin could finish his questions, a hurried voice rang out from the phone. I'm sorry, time is up. I have to hang up. With that, the other side abruptly disconnected the call. Listening to the beeping sound in his ear, Amamiya Rin suspected he might have been played. More than 2 hours later, Amamiya Rin opened his eyes in a clothing store 10 miles away. Before him were narrow walls and clothes hanging on them. Scanning his gaze around, the Kawakami Tomi he was synchronized with was currently inside a fitting room. He looked down at the clothes on his body. It was a flamboyant red dress. Really carefree. Amamiya Rin decisively changed out of the clothes, took the wallet out of the handbag placed to the side, and opened it to take a look. The thickness of the bills stuffed inside was considerable, sufficient for the upcoming expenses. Amamiya Rin pushed the door open and walked out. Outside was a luxurious high-end clothing store. A shop assistant nearby immediately approached, a professional, sweet smile on her face. Miss, how was the fitting? That dress really suits your temperament, it's like it was custom-made for you. Her tone was full of sincerity. Amamiya Rin didn't pay her any attention. He passed through the shelves, his gaze sweeping quickly until he found the area for sportswear. He selected a dark gray women's sports set, and returned to the fitting room amidst the shop assistant's astonished gaze. When he came out, she had already changed into that women's sportswear, which was convenient for movement. Miss, that dress really suits your temperament, are you sure you don't want it? At the checkout counter, the shop assistant's eyes and tone were incredibly regretful. Amamiya Rin didn't reply, he quickly paid the money and left the clothing store. At Ikatsu Sports Club, using a different body, Amamiya Rin once again visited this abnormal gym. After 6 hours of pressure training, he brought this body up to the level of a male fitness enthusiast. Afterward, he ate and drank heartily to replenish the consumed stamina, and made a trip to Toto General Hospital to take away that sharpened wooden sword. Tama Region, XX Town. Sitting in a taxi, Amamiya Rin gave the driver the address he obtained from the shared memory. The driver responded with an affirmative grunt, smoothly started the car, and merged into the urban night traffic. The neon lights outside the window were like fluttering ribbons, weaving and flickering between the high-rise buildings. Amamiya Rin sat in the back seat, closing his eyes to rest his mind. He silently circulated the crimson lotus breathing. His long and steady breathing caused his chest to rise and fall slightly, gradually adjusting the coordination of his spirit and body to their optimal state. However, just as the Kawakami Tomi that Amamiya Rin was linked to could obtain the memories of other Kawakami Tomis, the other Kawakami Tomis could likewise perceive their memories. Perhaps there was some delay, but it was difficult for the Kawakami Tomis to hide things from one another. Amamiya Rin sensed it. Number 0 Kawakami Tomi was changing her location. She had taken a car and left that villa in the suburbs. That's troublesome enough. The corner of Amamiya Rin's mouth twitched slightly. Trying to capture a Kawakami Tomi wandering outside was indeed not easy. No wonder he hadn't heard of other Tomis pulling other Kawakami Tomis into the Tomi network these past few days. Under the condition where memories were mutually accessible, trying to catch someone was truly difficult. However, Kawakami Tomi had left alone. She had abandoned teacher Takagi. That man was still at the suburban villa. Deal with Takagi and that monster, then go catch her, there probably won't be enough time. Amamiya Rin muttered to himself, closing his eyes once more. Underscore. Wentmore, Walnut-chan. New history, reincarnated as Mojito, watch me manipulate everyone. White heavy checkmark, read 40 chapters ahead on every series. White heavy checkmark, unlock supporter-only perks and news. Let's reach these milestones together. 100 Power Stones equals +1 free chapter for all readers. 140 members equals +5 bonus chapters for all series. Walnut-chan on P. Chapter 75, The Meat in the Refrigerator. 1,319 words. I have a proposal. Inside the Tomi network, several thoughts traveled along the neural pathways to reach Amamiya Rin's brain. If you want to be a good person, you might as well give us a few days off and let us go to different cities. Just like a giant spider web, shrouding the area centered on Tokyo. This way, no matter where the other imposters try to flee, we can stop them in time. The Tomis harbored malicious intentions, and their malice was naturally directed at the so-called imposters, which were the other versions of themselves. Everyone's charm was identical, and their memories were shared. In comparison, their only advantage was unity, although this unity was also a matter of necessity. Acting individually, it would be too difficult to take down other versions of themselves. They had to unite and cooperate to achieve it. I haven't forbidden you from doing these things. As long as you don't commit crimes or evil deeds, you are free. Amamiya Rin held the wooden sword in his arms and responded with a flat attitude. Humph, that's what I hate most about you. You always give this kind of ambiguous response. Amamiya Rin gave no comment to Kawakami Tomi's complaint, and Kawakami Tomi, knowing Amamiya Rin's attitude clearly, grumbled and cut off the communication. The car drove toward an increasingly remote area. The lights gradually became sparse, and the indistinct trees looked like ghosts in the darkness. Trouble you to turn right at the intersection ahead, and then pull over, Amamiya Rin suddenly spoke. The driver stopped as instructed. This was not the destination, but a slightly secluded street corner, still some distance away from the target. Amamiya Rin paid and got out of the car. The night wind carried a chill, blowing the bangs on his forehead. His sharp gaze swept over the surrounding environment. He took the wooden sword out of the sword bag, held it in his left hand, and strode toward the destination with large steps. The villa, though called a villa, it was actually just a large Western-style house, looked slightly dilapidated from the outside. Amamiya Rin walked straight to the main entrance and knocked on the door a few times with the wooden sword. Before long, faint footsteps came from inside the house. The lock turned, the door was pulled open from the inside, and a figure appeared before Amamiya Rin's eyes. Looking about 40 years old, the person who opened the door was an undistinguished middle-aged man. Seeing Amamiya Rin standing outside the door, he asked in surprise, "Tomi, didn't you drive out? How come?" Before he could finish speaking, the middle-aged man suddenly stopped. "You aren't Tomi. Where did you pop out from, you imposter?" His brows furrowed tight, his gaze fixed dead on Amamiya Rin, asking warily. He. Teacher Takagi has a good eye, spotting that you're an imposter at a glance." Amamiya Rin ignored the ridicule ringing in his brain, his right hand resting on the handle of the wooden sword. "Although I'm very curious how you could tell I'm not Kawakami Tomi." Before his voice fell, Takagi's expression changed. He subconsciously tried to retreat and slammed the door shut. However, Amamiya Rin's movement was faster. His right hand was still resting on the hilt, but his wrist suddenly exerted force. Clang! The sharp sound of the wooden sword leaving its sheath cut through the air, exceptionally clear in the silent night. Shinkage Ryu, Sojetsu. A smear of brown blade light transformed into moonlight, sweeping diagonally upward from below, slashing ruthlessly onto Takagi's chin. Crack! A muffled sound rang out. The sharpened wooden sword, like a heavy iron ruler, chopped viciously into Takagi's flesh. Takagi's chin was deformed. The force transmitted through his skull prevented him from even letting out a scream. His entire person was carried backward by the force of the drawing technique. Blood and several broken teeth, mixed with saliva, sprayed from the corner of his mouth as his body slammed heavily onto the floor inside the door, ceasing all movement. He had passed out. His chin was split open, flesh flayed, and blood surged out rapidly, dyeing the front of his clothes red. Amamiya Rin pushed the door open and walked in. Squatting down, his palm groped over Takagi's face a few times. With a forceful tug, he tore off a layer of face skin. Underneath this face skin was the appearance of a young male in his 20s or 30s. That was exactly Teacher Takagi's appearance. He had always been occupying other people's residences using this kind of human skin mask. Human skin mask, it really is this stuff. Amamiya Rin pinched the torn-off face skin, a trace of doubt flashing in his eyes. Human skin masks usually appeared in wuxia novels, though such things existed in reality, generally made of silicone. The texture felt wrong. Could it really be human skin? Amamiya Rin muttered to himself, his expression darkening slightly. Takagi had taken a hit from his drawing technique, and had already passed out. He wouldn't be waking up anytime soon. If he wanted to investigate further, now was not the time. Amamiya Rin stood up, stepped over Takagi's body, and closed the door backhand. The light in the entryway was somewhat dim, shining on the expensive tiles and reflecting a solitary shadow. The interior was terrifyingly quiet. However, beyond the sound of Amamiya Rin's breathing, he could faintly hear the subtle sound of some wet, slippery object rubbing against something, coming from above the ceiling. Looking up for a glance, Amamiya Rin gripped the wooden sword tightly. He didn't rush up to investigate, instead, he quickly checked the first floor. Living room, dining room, kitchen. When he pushed open the kitchen door, an indescribable, bizarre odor rushed at his face. The smell was very pungent, like some kind of chemical reagent, and there was also a scent of rot. Connecting the dots to what had happened, Amamiya Rin's gaze quickly swept over the kitchen. The kitchen was clean, one could even say abnormally tidy, there were no stains on the floor. The source of that smell was obvious, the double-door refrigerator in the corner. He walked forward and reached out to pull open the refrigerator door. Cold air surged out, mixed with that strange smell, only much more intense. Amamiya Rin's gaze landed on the bottom layer, where several bulging black plastic bags were stuffed. The bags were frozen hard, with white frost forming on the surface. He reached out, grabbed one of them, and tore it open with force. Rip! The frozen stiff plastic ruptured, and the contents tumbled out with a clatter, scattering onto the kitchen floor. It was meat. Chunks of meat of various colors and sizes. Dark red muscle fibers, white fat, several gray-white strips, a few pieces with a texture looking like liver or spleen, half a calf with a jagged break where jagged white bone pierced through, 2 bruising purple fingernails, and several molars still attached to their roots. Everything was frozen together in a chaotic mess, emitting a pungent smell like chemical reagents. Amamiya Rin lowered his head, looking expressionlessly for a few seconds. With a bang, he closed the refrigerator door. The loud noise echoed in the silent kitchen. Amamiya Rin stayed no longer. He turned and left the kitchen, but that smell stuck in his nasal cavity, lingering and refusing to disperse. He returned to the entryway, looked up at the stairs leading to the second floor, and tightened his grip on the hilt of the wooden sword in his right hand. __________. P. Walnut-chan. New history, reincarnated as Mojito, watch me manipulate everyone. White heavy checkmark, read 40 chapters ahead on all series. White heavy checkmark, get exclusive content and updates. Help us hit our targets. 100 Power Stones equals plus 1 free chapter for all. 140 members equals plus 5 bonus chapters, all stories. Chapter 76, Monster. 1,317 words. Amamiya Rin stepped onto the stairs and arrived at the second floor. The corridor on the second floor was dim and lightless, nothing could be seen clearly. However, he could hear the friction sound of heavy objects being dragged, and the dull thuds of collisions ringing out from time to time, came from the deepest part of the corridor. Amamiya Rin walked over and stood outside a room door. The sounds were coming from right inside here. Amamiya Rin's left hand rested on the door handle. However, it seemed to be locked from the inside, the door wouldn't open. Amamiya Rin turned around, went downstairs, and returned to the entryway. Takagi was still lying there. That single strike to the chin, had Amamiya Rin not controlled his force well, would have killed him thoroughly. Rummaging through Takagi's clothes pockets, he quickly found a ring of keys. Taking the keys, Amamiya Rin didn't immediately head to the second floor. Instead, he returned to the kitchen and found a spare lighter, as well as cooking wine and cooking oil. Only then did he return to the second floor. Placing the cooking wine and cooking oil at the top of the stairs, Amamiya Rin strode to the room at the deepest end of the corridor and tried the keys one by one. Finally, the door opened. The sight inside the room caused Amamiya Rin's pupils to shrink involuntarily, despite his mental preparation. In the center of the room, two indescribable things were coiled up. Their trunks were like meat worms magnified countless times, presenting uncomfortable spiral segments. The gray-white, mottled skin was covered in festering traces, and turbid liquid oozed from inside every fold. At the very top of the trunk was a gigantic head. One could tell the head belonged to a female, but that was about all one could tell. The face had almost completely collapsed, covered everywhere with pitted sores and scars. The bulging eyeballs were like the dead eyes of a soaked fish, completely devoid of spirit. What made one's scalp tingle the most was that the section between the meatworm-like trunk and the gigantic head was composed of individual tomi heads. It was a body made of human heads, densely inlaid with countless faces. All of them were Kawakami tomi. Those faces varied in size, some were intact, some twisted, but all bore Tomi's characteristic beauty. However, at this moment, they were solidified on the wriggling meat lump-like reliefs. The expressions on those faces held a sense of numbness, lacking the rich emotions of a normal Tomi. From both sides of the trunk, pairs of female arms and legs also protruded in malformed shapes. The two monsters occupied most of the room's space. They slowly shifted their fat trunks, rubbing against the floor and emitting the sounds Amamiya Rin had heard from downstairs. So ugly. Even within the Tomi network, a rare, brief silence occurred before thoughts carrying disgust rang out. Don't dawdle. Hurry up and burn that ugly monster. That thing isn't something as simple as an imposter anymore. That kind of distorted freak can't even grow a normal body completely. What is Teacher Takagi doing? Although I don't care about experiments or whatever, isn't this too terrible? The Tomis ridiculed, complained, and urged. Faced with these two colossal Tomi aberrations, none of the Tomis could stand watching it. That face seems not to be Kawakami Tomi. A victim used as an experimental subject. Amamiya Rin raised his head, gazing at that gigantic head. Although its original appearance could no longer be discerned, he could judge from the facial contours that it was not Tomi. Males were skinned and placed in the refrigerator in the kitchen, while females were manufactured into monsters like this. Just as Amamiya Rin was observing it, the pair of dead fish-like eyes on the giant head rotated slightly. The turbid pupils seemed to focus on Amamiya Rin. In the next moment, the fleshy torso beneath the giant head trembled violently. All the inlaid Tomi faces looked at Amamiya Rin simultaneously, though expressionless, the faces radiated a certain malice. "I will set you all free." Meeting the gaze of that gigantic head, a look of sorrow flowed through Amamiya Rin's eyes. However, before his voice had even faded, that fat trunk slammed toward Amamiya Rin with extreme speed. Its posture was like a python, with countless arms and legs dancing madly, yet also like a giant wave of meat. There was no reason for Amamiya Rin to clash head-on. His left foot retreated half a step, and his body leaned to the back right with the momentum, narrowly letting the frontal charge pass. The monster's trunk grazed past his sportswear, bringing a wind that rushed at his face. In the instant they crossed paths, Amamiya Rin's left thumb had already pushed the sword guard forward slightly, while his right hand gripped the hilt simultaneously. Iajetsu, Suijetsu. The sound of the wooden sword leaving the sheath was hurried and piercing. A sharp blade light flashed past, chopping down onto a Tomi head on the side of the monster's trunk. Pfft! An accurate and ruthless strike sliced open the Tomi's face, a smear of blood dividing the visage in two. The monster let out a howl of pain mixed with numerous female voices. It appeared that the perception of every Tomi was shared. The dancing arms grabbed at Amamiya Rin. Having succeeded in one strike, Amamiya Rin did not linger in battle. He borrowed the force of drawing the blade to spin and retreat. At the same time, the scabbard held in his left hand swept horizontally, using the sheath's body to parry a pale arm. The arm collided with the scabbard, making a dull sound. Although this monster's size was huge, the strength of the arm was not very great, allowing Amamiya Rin to easily block it with the scabbard. The other monster also launched an assault. A slender arm struck from the side, grabbing at Amamiya Rin's neck. Amamiya Rin's footsteps did not stop, he continued to retreat. The wooden sword in his right hand changed direction mid-withdrawal, the blade slamming fiercely onto that wrist. Crack! Accompanied by the crisp sound of bone cracking, that arm hung down limply. Both monsters had been wounded in succession. They twisted their massive bodies in pain, their movements clumsy yet ferocious, crashing toward Amamiya Rin in a pincer attack from left and right. Their massive sizes almost blocked off all space available for dodging. Amamiya Rin's gaze sharpened, and he immediately entered a deeper combat state. The synchronization of the Crimson Lotus breathing pulled all the other Tomis in. The power transmitted through the neural lines drastically boosted Amamiya Rin's neural reaction speed, and his senses became even keener. He could clearly hear the sound of mucus dripping from the monsters, smell that odor mixed with rot and blood, and see the wriggling of every muscle on the monsters' bodies even more clearly. At the moment the two monsters were about to crash over, Amamiya Rin advanced instead of retreating. He suddenly ducked and slid forward, drilling through the gap between the monsters' trunks, a gap so narrow it couldn't be narrower. The foul stench filled Amamiya Rin's nasal cavity as countless pale arms grabbed at him from both sides. His right hand slashed horizontally with the wooden sword, cleaving the wrist grabbing at his face from the right, while his left hand parried with the scabbard, jarring away the arm attacking from the left. _______. Walnut-chan in P for more. New history, reincarnated as Mojito, watch me manipulate everyone. White heavy checkmark, get immediate access to 40 early chapters for all stories. White heavy checkmark, enjoy exclusive material and special announcements. Help us unlock these community rewards. 100 Power Stones equals +1 bonus chapter for everyone. 140 members equals +5 extra chapters across all stories. P. Walnut-chan. Chapter 77, Sword Fight Moment. 1,388 words. Passing through the gap between the two monsters, Amamiya Rin stomped heavily on the ground. Generating power from his waist and abdomen, he halted, twisted his body, and turned back. His left foot stepped forward fiercely, the heel scraping against the floor and letting out an ear-piercing screech. Amamiya Rin's center of gravity consequently lowered forward. Like a cheetah about to pounce, he was brimming with gathered strength. He tossed the scabbard toward the monster's massive head while both hands tightly gripped the hilt. The wooden sword was stabilized in the middle stance, the the tip angled slightly downward, pointing directly at the monster's neck. It was a neck fused from dozens of Kawakami Tomi faces. Countless strands of black hair were tangled together, and the pale skin adhered to one another, forming a bloated, grotesque structure. A sharp glint flashed through Amamiya Rin's eyes. His core muscle groups in his waist and abdomen contracted abruptly, twisting his entire body's strength into a single rope that transmitted through his spine straight into his arms. New shadow style, evil. Thrust. Accompanied by an explosive ki, Amamiya Rin's body acted like a spring. After compressing to the absolute limit, he suddenly erupted, his figure transforming into an arrow released from the bowstring as he shot toward that meat worm. The wooden sword was no longer a tool for slashing, but an extension of his arms. It became a resolute bolt of lightning, cutting through the air in the most concise straight line, stabbing directly into the intersection of those Tomi faces. The tip of the blade hit the target with precision. Accompanied by a muffled, sluggish sound of piercing flesh, half of the blade sank into the meat worm's neck. What followed was an even stronger resistance. It felt like fragile, fused bones, or perhaps a massive cluster of tough, resilient sinew. The muscles on Amamiya Rin's arms tensed to their absolute limit. He could clearly feel every fraction of difficulty as the blade pushed forward. A wooden sword was ultimately just a wooden sword. Being able to achieve this much was already entirely due to Amamiya Rin's transcendent swordsmanship. Gwa! The impaled monster let out overlapping wails. Dozens of Tomi faces twisted simultaneously in intense agony. The massive body thrashed around violently, attempting to fling the wooden sword away along with Amamiya Rin. Thrash around. Amamiya Rin adjusted his stance, gritting his teeth tightly. The veins on his forehead bulged as he nailed his body dead in place. This monster's weak point was probably right at the neck. Chopping at the fat torso was useless, and the head was too high to reach. Only the neck, with its heavy traces of splicing, could be penetrated by the wooden sword. Seeing that the other meat worm was also about to turn around, Amamiya Rin took a deep breath. This breath was inhaled deeply and rapidly, causing his chest to violently expand. Immediately after, a scorching aura rose from his abdomen, surging madly up along his spine and piercing straight into his crown. Red Lotus breathing. Limit state. It was as if some sort of shackle in his body had been violently shattered. Adrenaline surged like a bursting dam. An explosive power that transcended his own limits erupted from within Kawakami Tomi's body. Left sweep. Amamiya Rin's hands tightly gripped the hilt, pressing the weight of his entire body, his strength, and the brief burst brought by the breathing technique all onto the single strike. Pushing against the immense resistance pieced together by bones, the wooden sword, which had already deeply pierced the monster's neck, was pressed downward from the center point by Amamiya Rin using brute force paired with technique, tearing open a gap sufficient to exert power. Amamiya Rin forcefully twisted his wrists and spun his body, driving the blade to slash horizontally. Accompanied by a muffled, murky thud, the blade fully sank into the bloated neck and then, with an indomitable momentum, penetrated out from the other side. More than half of the monster's neck was cleaved open. Viscous black blood erupted from the gaping wound like an out-of-control fountain, drenching Amamiya Rin from head to toe. The foul stench was like that of a long-dead rotting corpse. Amamiya Rin's expression remained unchanged. His right foot stomped heavily on the ground, stabilizing his forward-rushing posture caused by the exertion. He forcefully twisted his wrists, shifting the angle of the wooden sword's edge. The blood-stained blade that had just broken out of the body aimed once again at the ruptured neck. Without a shred of hesitation, he poured all of his strength into his arms without reservation. Right sweep. Moving from left to right with an even more ferocious momentum than before, the wooden sword sliced back horizontally along that massive wound. This time, the resistance was much smaller. The blade slashed through the Tomi faces, ruthlessly tearing apart the adhered muscle bundles and snapping the fragile bones, forcefully decapitating the neck made of countless Tomi faces right down the middle. Above the bloated worm body, the neck, still seemingly attached by skin, toppled over to the right. The massive face of the giant head seemed to gain a spark of life for the first time, revealing an expression mixed with pain and relief. Then it slammed onto the floor with a crash, letting out a dull, booming thud. Having lost its head, the meat worm's torso convulsed violently. Countless hands and feet danced madly, and foul bodily fluids splattered everywhere. But its movements had clearly lost all coordination, it was merely a dying instinct. Those dozens or hundreds of Tomy faces were seemingly just faces, lacking a brain that could control the body. It was also at this moment that cold arms draped over Amamiya Rin's back, grabbing onto his shoulders and arms. That was the other one. Although the time Amamiya Rin took to kill the first monster was brief, that little amount of time was enough for the other monster to turn around. A massive shadow enveloped Amamiya Rin's body, and foul breath sprayed down from above. Sensing the rapidly descending behemoth, Amamiya Rin exerted force in his waist. While twisting his body to dodge, he reversed his grip on the wooden sword and erected it behind his back. A sharp pain exploded, and warm blood immediately flowed down his cheek. Enduring the agony, Amamiya Rin swung the sword from behind, batting away the arms grabbing onto his body. He collapsed to the ground and rolled a few times to widen the distance from the monster. Getting back up and looking toward the monster, he saw a Tomy mouth chewing on a piece of meat. Without any suspense, that was exactly Amamiya Rin's, or rather Kawakami Tomy's, ear. Could be worse. Faced with this situation, Amamiya Rin instead breathed a sigh of relief. His previous maneuver was to prevent his head and shoulders from being bitten off by the monster. Merely losing an ear wouldn't affect the battle. The monster twisted its worm body, flailing the arms and legs growing out of its torso as it lunged toward Amamiya Rin. New Shadow Style. Simple Domain. Amamiya Rin's gaze was focused, his breathing steady and long. With a state of mind like still water, he maximized his perception, spreading it out from himself like an invisible radar. Within a radius of 2 meters, every single movement of the monster, including the contraction of its muscles, the shifting of its center of gravity, and the trajectory of its attacks, was reflected clearly in the lake of his mind like ripples on the water's surface. The moment the monster approached, Amamiya Rin shifted his footsteps and slid sideways, brushing past the monster in an extremely dangerous posture. The distance between the two was at its closest a mere 10 centimeters, yet Amamiya Rin did not panic in the slightest. While dodging, he launched a counterattack, swinging the wooden sword in his hand down and forcefully snapping an arm that was reaching out to grab him. ________. Walnut-chan. New history, reincarnated as Mojito, watch me manipulate everyone. White heavy checkmark. New releases are dropping, plus get exclusive content and updates. White heavy checkmark. Help us unlock community rewards. 100 Power Stones equals plus 1 bonus chapter for everyone. 140 members equals plus 5 extra chapters of all stories. Chapter 78, Tomy Research Diary. 1,303 words. The monster let out layers of sharp roars, its fat torso twisting toward Amamiya Rin in an attempt to crush him with its sheer weight. Amamiya Rin had long anticipated this movement. He kicked off the monster's fat torso, a slimy and resilient sensation transmitting through the soles of his shoes. Borrowing the recoil force, Amamiya Rin vaulted backward into the air. He fluidly tucked and flipped, ultimately landing steadily. At the very moment he landed, the monster twisted its body and chased after him. Amamiya Rin's feet remained firmly planted, the tip of his blade pointing toward the ground. A gaze that could only be described as tranquil enveloped the monster's entire body. 3 meters, 2 meters, 1 meter, half a meter. At the exact moment the two sides were about to collide head-on, Amamiya Rin finally moved. He slightly turned his body and thrust out the wooden sword. Accompanied by the crisp sound of bone cracking, in the instant his figure blurred, he vanished from the monster's line of sight as if turning invisible. From an observer's perspective, it was silky smooth footwork akin to a magic trick. Attacking weak points, creating blind spots, escaping through a path of survival, and using the monster's own fat, complex body to blind it. Taking advantage of the monster's inability to change its attack in time, Amamiya Rin swung his blade down again, shattering the elbow joint of one of its arms. Amamiya Rin fought as he moved. His footsteps became agile, weaving around the monster. The monster's lunges were ferocious and direct, but Amamiya Rin could always sidestep, slide, and duck at a hair's breadth. He constantly swapped positions, narrowly dodging attack after attack. Compared to the very beginning of the battle, he was handling it with much greater ease. Only one enemy remained, so his tactics could change accordingly. He no longer needed to worry about attacks from different directions, and his space for movement had become spacious. By concentrating entirely on observing the target through his simple domain, he could even avoid getting injured altogether. Amamiya Rin anticipated the monster's movements, sometimes thrusting straight, sometimes slashing horizontally. Every strike accurately hit the monster's limb joints or Tomi's faces, leaving behind wounds of varying depths. Dark red blood quickly soaked the floor, and a heavy scent of rust filled the air. Gradually, the monster's movements slowed down. Its stamina, or perhaps its energy, was limited. It couldn't sustain its frenzied attacks for long. Amamiya Rin knew the time had come. He evaded another sluggish lunge, his gaze suddenly turning sharp. His breathing changed. It was no longer the steady and long breaths of the basic mode, but incredibly deep and slow, as if trying to draw all the surrounding air into his lungs. His mind was highly focused, his consciousness sinking into that domain of cutting intent, polished through countless slaughters and dhyana. Mind and breath fading together, entering dhyana. Peerless swordsmanship, sword and zen as one. From stillness to motion, it all happened in a single thought. Amamiya Rin's sympathetic nervous system was actively stimulated to its limit. Adrenaline surged into his blood vessels like an erupting volcano, and an overloaded power roared and galloped through his body. He didn't give it the slightest chance to react. There was only a thrust that was fast to the absolute extreme. His airborne body delivered the blade, thrusting forward like an arrow released from a bowstring. A blurred brown trajectory traveled along the sole opening observed by the simple domain, piercing straight into the monster's temple until the sword guard pressed against its skin. The powerful impact knocked the monster's body to the ground. Amamiya Rin's feet stomped heavily on its neck, his wrist twisted, and the blade churned inside the skull, mercilessly destroying the monster's brain. Dark red blood mixed with grayish-white brain matter splattered from the wound, splashing onto Amamiya Rin's cold, merciless cheek. Please become a Buddha. The world of the dead, I imagine, is not as cruel as the world of the living. Slowly pulling out the wooden sword and looking at the two massive, distorted bodies, Amamiya Rin sincerely prayed for the two victims from the bottom of his heart. Before humanity attempted to exploit the energy of the underworld, compared to the world of the living, the world of the dead should be the only place of peace, right? Blazing firelight illuminated the pitch-black room. Amamiya Rin tossed the lighter aside, turned, and walked out, shutting the smoke and flames behind the door. In the next room, Amamiya Rin found a black notebook recording Takagi's research on Tomi. Gamma rays can enhance Tomi's regenerative abilities. Based on observations, Tomi's cells can absorb any energy, including that of gamma rays. Strong acids can effectively inhibit Tomi's regenerative abilities. Tomi's regenerative abilities can resist strong acid because she is constantly regenerating. Does she offset it through even stronger regeneration? Or did she evolve a resistance in an extremely short period of time? I always feel like there's an invisible hand controlling all of this. The process has been too smooth. Ever since I escaped the sanatorium and found Tomi, everything has gone smoothly except for the research on Tomi. Where does the energy for regeneration come from? Even without providing any energy, Tomi's body can regenerate, albeit slowly. Creating something out of nothing. Can Tomi control her own regeneration speed? Sometimes she can grow a complete body within a single day, and sometimes it only takes a few minutes. Can she freely adjust her regeneration efficiency? Could it be that she can store energy and use it for growth when needed? Alchemy. Immortality. Do such things really exist in the world? Tomi is immortal. What kind of immortality is merely shedding skin? It's ridiculous. Under unstable mental conditions, Tomi's body will undergo a splitting phenomenon, splitting another Tomi from the head. Is it the effect of brain waves? I don't quite understand. If Tomi is willing, can she control her own splitting? Not just the head. If her arm is cut off, will it grow multiple arms? It seems not. The split Tomis always start from the head. They mutually consider each other imposters and cannot be controlled. Takagi's research findings on Kawakami Tomi were basically all information Amamiya Rin already knew. However, some of his hypotheses inspired Amamiya Rin. When mentally unstable, Kawakami Tomi's body would split. Could this splitting be controlled? Immortality. Shedding skin. Is this talking about flesh-colored horror? The contents of the story don't even match. I can't say they don't match at all. So Takagi's human skin mask is a product of that kind of alchemy. Amamiya Rin remembered what the alchemy mentioned in the diary was. The Junji Ito manga, flesh-colored horror. The villain's deceased husband was an alchemist who researched an elixir of immortality, but accidentally obtained a byproduct that could separate skin and flesh while keeping them alive. The villain, obsessed with the charm of muscles, not only peeled off her own skin, but also wanted to peel off her son's skin, failing only because the younger sister kept intervening. Completely meaningless stuff. An alternative form of immortality, but it can only be used as a human skin mask. Amamiya Rin shook his head slightly. If the shed skin was properly maintained, one could indeed obtain an ageless appearance, but what use was that? The internal organs would still age all the same. _______. Seek, Walnut-chan. New history, reincarnated as Mahito, watch me manipulate everyone. White heavy checkmark, read 40 chapters ahead of everyone else. White heavy checkmark, get cool exclusive stuff and updates. Let's hit these goals. 100 Power Stones equals 1 extra chapter for the public. 140 members equals 5 extra chapters on all stories for supporters. P. Walnut-chan. Chapter 79, Do Not Kill Humans, Slay All Non. 1,415 words. Closing the diary, Amamiya Rin put the notebook away and turned to head down to the first floor. Takagi was still lying on the floor at the entryway, unconscious. Amamiya Rin grabbed his ankles, dragged him into the bathroom, and positioned his face under the faucet. Turning on the faucet, a stream of freezing water splashed onto Takagi's face. In no time, Takagi jolted awake, the intense pain in his jaw twisting his entire face. He struggled, trying to sit up, but Amamiya Rin stomped heavily on his chest, slamming his back against the floor. I have a few questions I want to ask you. Amamiya Rin's wooden sword was stained with a mixture of red and white liquids. He pressed the sharp tip of the blade against Takagi's forehead, letting the clear water wash over it. Although I don't think there's any need to hold out hope, is anyone from the owner's family of this villa still alive? Amamiya Rin's gaze was cold, the look he directed down at Takagi carried lethal intent. Alive. Takagi's gaze was murky. It took a good while before his eyes focused on Amamiya Rin's face, and his brain cleared up a bit. After grasping his current situation, Takagi revealed a mocking smile. Are you here for a visit? Please head to the second floor. The only masters capable of receiving guests, other than me, are the women on the second floor. With a crooked jaw, Takagi spat out those malicious words in a slurred tone. Amamiya Rin's wrist sank. The wooden sword slid down Takagi's forehead and rested over his right eye. Do you have anything else to say? His eyeball deformed slightly under the pressure of the wooden sword. That bizarre sense of oppression made Takagi instinctively hold his breath. The mixture of blood and brain matter coated his right eye, bringing a viscous and freezing sensation. On the other side, Takagi's left eye focused on Amamiya Rin's bloodstained sportswear and missing left ear. Catching a glimpse of the filth staining the wooden sword, he instantly understood everything. He parted his bleeding lips and let out a hoarse, raspy laugh. It seems you've already met them. Isn't it very, Before Takagi could finish his sentence, the tip of Amamiya Rin's sword pressed down. The wooden edge sank into the soft tissue of the eyeball. Takagi's right eye was like a punctured grape, clear fluid mixed with fresh blood spilled from the wound. Takagi let out a shrill, miserable scream. The excruciating pain sent his entire body into convulsions. His hands clawed at the floor, his nails scraping a piercing screech against the tiles, but his body remained entirely immobile under Amamiya Rin's foot. I ask, you answer. Don't spout any nonsense outside of my questions. Amamiya Rin's expression grew increasingly ruthless. He slowly pulled the blade of the wooden sword out of Takagi's right eye socket, dragging out a string of blood beads and ruptured tissue. By now, Takagi's right eye had turned into a mangled mess of flesh and blood, sinking deeply into the socket. Second question. Your diary mentioned alchemy. Where did you get it from? Give me the address. Takagi's body trembled violently from the severe pain, hoarse gasps escaping his throat. It was evident he couldn't immediately organize his words to answer Amamiya Rin. Amamiya Rin frowned, raised his foot, and viciously stomped his shoe sole into Takagi's ribs. Gah! The bones buckling under the pressure, Takagi screamed and curled up, but his attention seemed to finally shift away from his eye to another spot. Answer my question. Takagi's face twisted hideously. It took a long time before he finally managed to string his words together. Half a month ago. In an alley in Shibuya. I met a woman wearing a trench coat. She asked me if she was beautiful. I thought it was the slit-mouthed woman. She opened her trench coat. Underneath was a flesh body without skin. I followed her to her residence in Setagaya Ward. I hid outside the window and eavesdropped. She and her younger sister were talking. They mentioned the recipe for shedding skin. The address is Setagaya Ward, Shimokitazawa. 3-24 Banshee. Takagi spoke brokenly, drawing in cold breaths from time to time. He looked exceptionally strained, but in the end, he revealed the origin of the alchemy. Amamiya Rin nodded slightly. This family was already beyond saving, but the flesh-colored monster could be dealt with, helping that kid, who was constantly forced by his mother to be skinned, escape his family of origin. Now then, the final question. How did you determine that I wasn't Kawakami Tomi? With the important matters handled, Amamiya Rin recalled something of little consequence. The fact that Takagi could recognize at a glance that he wasn't Kawakami Tomi was quite a strange occurrence. Do you have no self-awareness? In a flash, Takagi's left eye widened fiercely. On top of the pain and terror, a heavy layer of mockery was added to his twisted face. I don't want to repeat myself. Cut the crap. Amamiya Rin raised the wooden sword and spoke coldly. You're inferior to Tomi. You don't have her charm. Although you look very similar. There's still a gap. Your faces. Compared to Tomi, you're just an ugly woman. Takagi's left eye gleamed with a crazed hue, along with undisguised disdain and contempt. My face. Amamiya Rin instinctively touched his cheek, a look of confusion surfacing on his face. That shouldn't be right. There wouldn't be any difference in Kawakami Tomi's appearance. Even if he was the one using it, he was only lowering its seductive charm through his expressions and attitude. In reality, he was still just as beautiful. Forget it. Amamiya Rin gripped the hilt with both hands, not planning to obsess over the ravings of a madman. Are you trying to kill me? I can't die yet. I still haven't discovered Tomi's secret. Seeing Amamiya Rin raise the wooden sword high above his head, terror finally appeared on Takagi's face. Spraying bloody froth from his mouth, his body twisted as he shuffled backward, desperately trying to put distance between himself and Amamiya Rin. I have never killed anyone, nor do I plan to. Even though swordsmanship is a killing art, I didn't learn the sword to kill. Amamiya Rin said flatly. A glimmer of hope lit up in Takagi's eye. However, from the bottom of my heart, I feel that you are no longer human. Before his voice even faded, the wooden sword in Amamiya Rin's hands had already transformed into a streak of brown lightning, chopping down vertically. The sharp edge of the wooden sword cleaved precisely into Takagi's neck, snapping his cervical vertebrae with a crisp sound. His head lolled to the side at an unnatural angle, his eye bulging wide open, seemingly unable to comprehend Amamiya Rin's words. When slaying non-human entities, my heart harbors no hesitation. Amamiya Rin gave his wrist a flick, and withdrew the wooden sword. Takagi's body twitched twice, and then all signs of life vanished. He flicked off the blood beads from the blade, wiped the wooden sword clean with a towel, and then dried off the water with clean paper before finally sheathing it and turning to leave the bathroom. Passing through the hallway thick with the stench of blood, Amamiya Rin began rummaging through the chests and cabinets inside the villa. In this country, depositing money into a bank not only yielded no interest but actually cost money. Therefore, Amamiya Rin easily found the stash of wealth, over 1,000,000 yen in cash in total. Tucking away the money, Amamiya Rin finally walked out of the villa. He turned to face the building, clasped his hands together, and prayed silently. I don't know the Great Compassion Mantra or anything like that, so I'll just bless you all to become Buddhas as soon as possible. As for this money, since you're already dead anyway, just lend it to me for now. I promise I won't use it for any wicked deeds, so please rest in peace. ________. Walnut-chan, winky face. New history, reincarnated as Mojito, watch me manipulate everyone. White heavy checkmark jump 40 chapters ahead of the public release. White heavy checkmark get access to special perks and news. Help smash these goals. 100 Power Stones equals +1 bonus chapter for everyone. 140 members equals +5 extra chapters for all stories. P. Walnut-chan. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Novels Wonderland.